Saw dudes, Valkyr Prime's dedicated build guide was just released, and predictably I am now releasing the level cap testing footage. The testing went as well as one would think, given that Valkyr is nearly unkillable with her rework and has a straightforward game plan. Her exalted Talons are some of the strongest weapons in the game and make mincemeat of anything dumb enough to stand in her way. Without further delay, let's get started. The Valkyr Prime build shown on screen was featured in the dedicated build video. However, instead of using Nourish over Paralysis, I used Roar this time. As expected, this is a Hysteria-centric loadout. This means that Steel Charge was used to increase melee damage and maximize damage per second. Prime Sure-Footed was used to prevent knockdowns while using other weapons. Yes, I know Hysteria prevents knockdowns, but swapping to a primary or a secondary weapon leaves Valkyr vulnerable. If you don't need it, then just don't use it. Blind Rage, Umbral Intensify, and Augur Secrets carry the backbone of this build's ability strength, increasing the armor and attack speed from Warcry, damage boost from Roar, and outgoing damage from Hysteria. Archon Continuity increases ability duration, reducing the drain of Hysteria and reducing the number of times needed to recast Warcry and Roar. It also allows Toxin procs from Valkyr's Talons to apply Corrosive for extra priming. Equilibrium pads out the energy economy by converting health into energy. Streamline recuperates some of the ability efficiency loss from Blind Rage and also reduces the energy drain of Hysteria. Catalyzing Shields grants a 1.33 second shield gate when shields are broken from full capacity. Finally, there is Augur Message, which further reduces Hysteria's drain and allows Valkyr to shield gate for another layer of survivability. If you can't already tell, this is an adapted version of the shield gate setup proposed in the last video. Essentially, Valkyr can refresh her shield gate with either Ripline, Warcry, or Roar, depending on the situation. This can extend the lifetime of her passive and give her another layer of defense. Unlike in the dedicated build video, I use Roar for this setup because I want to prove that Nourish is not always warranted and is in fact a crutch. Also, Roar scales much better with damage over time application and can skyrocket slash and toxin proc damage. I ran with the default arcane combo of Arcane Battery and Arcane Fury. Arcane Battery increases the base maximum energy level to 525, which increases once more when Warcry is active. It raises the energy maximum without having to use Prime Flow, saving mod space on the build. Prime Fury increases melee damage on a critical hit, further elevating Hysteria's wild damage. This arcane is not mandatory, but plays best into Valkyr Prime's kit. For this run, I used 1 Talforge Emerald Shard, 3 Talforge Violet Shards, and 1 Talforge Amber Shard. The 1 Talforge Emerald Shard increases the max stacks of Corrosive status by 3, allowing Valkyr's Talons to shred enemies faster. This eliminates the need to run Corrosive Rejection and allows Valkyr's Talons to be modded for Toxin only. This synergizes beautifully with Archon Continuity. 2 of the Violet Shards are used to increase melee critical damage, which is for Valkyr's Talons. The last Violet Shard was used as a mini equilibrium to further reduce energy strain for extended use of Hysteria. It turns out that an extended period of yelling drains energy extremely fast. The 1 Amber Shard was used to increase casting speed, making recasts of Warcry and Roar easier and less risk prone. Valkyr's Talons are pretty easy to build. Hysteria is the default stance and is unable to be changed. Dreamer's Wrath is the preferred Tenokai mod to maximize critical damage. Prime Reach and Spring Loaded Blade cap out the range to 7.15 meters. Condition Overload allows for scaling with primers. Organ Shatter increases crit damage, and Blood Rush and Galvanized Steel increase crit chance for red crits, with the latter increasing crit damage on kill. Prime Fever Strike adds toxin damage for damage over time, and allows for corrosive application via Archon Continuity. Prime Fury allows for faster cat scratching, and Melee Vortex allows for easier grouping with a magnetic primer. For this round of level cap testing, I brought out an old classic, Tenet Glaxion. This was a primer setup meant to further enhance Hysteria. I won't bore you with all of the specifics, but rather go over the main points. The beam from this weapon does chain up to 4 enemies, and the build on screen applies corrosive, radiation, cold, and magnetic procs and has a 124% status chance. Photon Overcharge allows for better energy recovery when killing enemies affected by cold procs. Primary Dexterity is only used to increase the combo duration of Hysteria and maintain the Blood Rush buff. In my secondary slot, I ran another old classic, Vasto Prime Incarnon. The evolutions for this build are Death Trap Trigger, Extended Volley, and Survivor's Edge. This weapon was purely a backup, just in case I ran out of energy or needed to get out of melee range. In truth, I only charged up the Incarnon mode and never used it again. That's how strong Valkyr Prime is. This is a normal raw damage build and uses primary dexterity to further increase the combo duration of Valkyr's Talons. The melee weapon I used was Praedos with the evolutions Drifting Grace, Shockwave Synergy, Evolved Ascension, and Universal Readiness. This, like Vasto Prime, was a backup build. Unlike Vasto Prime, this weapon saw a lot more use, since it could be used to stack up Valkyr's passive in energy droughts. The long range of this weapon allows for easy crowd multi-hits, making stacking incredibly easy. We're going back to tradition. For this video, I am once again using a Panzer build, because it's stupid. With Martyr Symbiosis, Valkyr essentially has 2 death gates. One is her passive, the second is the heal provided by the Panzer. Do you need it? No, but it's nice to have and gives worrywarts extra peace of mind. Synth Deconstruct helps feed into Equilibrium, Viral Quills allows for viral priming, and Panzer Devolution keeps buffs active at all times. Seismic Bond reduces the drain of Hysteria and the casting cost of Valkyr's other abilities. Tenacious Bond increases the critical multiplier of all weapons, and Reinforced Bond increases fire rate for Tenet Glaxion for better priming. The Claw build is the same as always. Even though Valkyr is not equipped with Archon Stretch, electricity damage is on the build for extra priming and crowd control. The rest of the build is meant to increase damage and further prime enemies with either impact procs, knockdown, or magnetic procs. Madurai is the focus school I use, since it's generally the best for level cap Void Cascade. Void Strike and Void Fuel were backups for Hysteria, just in case energy bottom out, or if Valkyr became nullified. Phoenix Talons work super well with Valkyr since it scales the physical damage of her talons. Power Transfer sped up casting animations for all her abilities, making gameplay smoother. Sling Strength provided more ability strength for all abilities, and increased DPS by affecting Warcry's and Roar's buffs, and Hysteria's base damage. The amp I used was the standard 147, also known as the Certus Brace, Raplac Prism, and Fad Scaffold. This is the amp that I always use, and I highly recommend you try it out for level cap runs. I use Magus Cloud, Magus Lockdown, Eternal Eradicate, and Eternal Onslaught as my operator arcanes. Let's talk about cat scratch shenanigans. This Valkyr level cap run went about as smoothly as I could have hoped for. There weren't any real hiccups or moments where I felt like I had to course correct mid-run or just scrap it altogether. Ripline was a big part of that. It made moving between Exalizers incredibly fast, and with the dual auger setup, I could reset my shields reliably with nearly every cast. That meant I was shield getting consistently without having to stop or go out of my way for it. It kept the pacing of the run intact and made transitions between rooms easy to manage. Warcry performed exactly how I needed it to. The bonus attack speed made Valkyr's talent hit faster and allowed me to keep the combo counter up with very little effort. With Blood Rush in play, that naturally led to red crits and high slash and toxin proc output. It also helped that I didn't have to rely on weapon swaps as much. Hysteria alone carried the vast majority of the damage. I didn't even use the Vasto Prime Incarnon, aside from charging it up once at the start of the mission. The only weapon that saw consistent use was Tenet Glaxion, but it made sense given that it was made to be a primer. Roar helped push the damage a little further, not just for the Talons, but also for any status damage that got applied along the way. I didn't have to think about how it contributed, since Roar is a universal Bane mod in a sense. Tenet Glaxion was the only consistent primer, and it did a solid job. The beam chaining effect hit multiple targets, and with 124% status chance, it reliably applied corrosive, cold, radiation, and magnetic. Photon Overcharge also played a role in helping with energy sustain whenever a cold proc kill happened, which was often enough to be noticeable. I did use Praedos a couple of times, mainly to build Valkyr's passive when energy was low or I was waiting on the next cascade. The reach and speed made it easy to hit multiple targets in a single swing, and since I was using it with primary dexterity, it also helped keep the melee combo going when I was between Hysteria windows. It wasn't a primary tool, but it made sense in the build and it didn't feel like a waste of a slot. Most of the run came down to rhythm, shield gating through Ripline, Warcry, or Roar, priming with Glaxion, and then just using Hysteria to clear everything out. That cycle didn't change much, which is probably why the whole thing felt so smooth. There wasn't a lot of panicking or backtracking or needing to micromanage rotations. Even when I got hit, the fallback layers were solid. Between my Panzer's mod setup using Martyr Symbiosis, shield gating, and Valkyr's passive, I wasn't relying on just one thing to stay alive or deal damage. Besides Hysteria, of course. It's kind of hard to talk about standout moments because there's nothing that got out of hand. There was no point where I felt like I needed to adjust or rethink how I was approaching the mission. I just followed the rotation and stayed on track. The energy economy was manageable even without Nourish, and Hysteria uptime was consistent. I just needed to know when to close a gap or disengage, or when to release the ability entirely and recuperate some energy. I wasn't switching to ranged weapons, and I wasn't kiting enemies around the map. The whole thing felt very contained. I will say that I went down once during the mission just because I lost track of the shield gate rotation. That in itself was my fault and was pretty annoying since I wanted to have a flawless run, but whatever. Looking back on it, I don't think that there's anything I would change. All the pieces work together flawlessly. Valkyr handled the scaling well and doesn't need babysitting, and she keeps her pressure consistent from start to finish. I will say that some may be turned off by the lack of Eternal War on the build, but for me, it's not a big deal. If you don't like shield gating, go ahead and stick it anywhere you want on the build. Can I recommend Valkyr Prime? Yes, she's a straightforward melee warframe with mobility, death defiance, and heaps of damage. Her rework as a whole has been a major success, which is reflected in her gameplay and ease of use. Her builds may not be the most inexpensive, nor new player friendly, but it's not massively overkill in my eyes. If you had to choose an exalted frame to take to level cap for the first time, I would choose Valkyr, simply because of the number of failsafes she has. Also, I like cats. It's a big plus. I hope this level cap video helped. Let me know what you think in the comments. As always, thank you all for watching, and happy farming. Stay safe.